In 1937, Cai Ye crossed over and became the son of the Protector General Cai E, activating the strongest imperial system and heading south to the Golden Triangle. Recruiting Chinese, building a strong military, developing infrastructure, heavy industry, and education, we have vigorously promoted the development of this Southeast Asian three-no-matter zone. We have fought in both the south and north, governing an area of 800,000 square kilometers with a population of 20 million. Just as Cai Ye was establishing his country, World War II broke out. He resolutely led his army to join in, reorganized the mountains and rivers, and expelled the Japanese invaders. For a moment, the world's attention focused on Southeast Asia, and the Axis and Allied powers wanted to woo him. Until the end of World War II in 1945, the world landscape underwent earth-shattering changes. A vast empire ruling the world is rising, and Yan and Huang have become the suzerainty of many countries in South Asia, North America, and Eastern Europe, with territories spread across the 5 oceans and 7 continents. Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1. Son of Cai E, Southwest Marshal. You are listening at novelfull.audio. September 1, 1939, Yangon, Myanmar. As the largest city in Myanmar, Yangon is located in the rich Irrawaddy River Delta, adjacent to the ocean, with not only ports but also airports. As early as 1855, after the British Army took control of all of Burma, they moved the colonial government from Mandalay to Yangon, which became the headquarters of the British Burmese Army and the economic and political center of British Burma. It was also the most densely populated city. Although Yangon suffered severe damage from earthquakes and tsunamis in the 1930s, with many ruins in the city, traces of prosperity from the past can still be seen, and a large number of refugees have fled the city. Because this city has been surrounded by orderly trenches and positions, countless people wearing dark green military uniforms and carrying the figure of Mauser K-98 shuttle through it, with machine guns and artillery aimed at Yangon ahead. After 3 years of operation, it's finally time to reap the rewards. At the forefront, a young man standing 1.85 meters tall, with a strong physique and a handsome face gazed at the city in front of him, feeling deeply moved. He is the posthumous son of Cai Ye, the famous general of the country, Cai E. He has lived for 2 lifetimes, but his past memories have been imprisoned since birth until an accident 3 years ago, when he finally remembered and merged into one. He is now Cai Ye, the son of Cai E, who graduated from the Berlin Military Academy a year earlier, and the youngest major general in China in the 21st century. 3 years ago, Cai Ye, who had just turned 20 years old, returned to China with a passionate heart preparing to participate in the anti-Japanese war. However, he did not expect to be ambushed and seriously injured, and his identity as the son of Cai E became a thorn in many people's eyes and flesh. This is also the reason why he gave up playing in China and went south to the Golden Triangle. Bald hair doesn't have much tolerance, and coupled with Cai Ye not coming from Huangpu Military Academy, how could he possibly be valued in the military? It would be better to leverage the power of Cai Ye's former subordinates, Long Yun and Lu Xiang, to find a new way to gather Chinese and overseas Chinese in Southeast Asia, establish an army, and expel the British Army, which has established the vast foundation we have today. Young Marshal. Jibu Ishir called. Our army captured Tuwa at 1 a.m. this morning and is now advancing towards Danlao and Gaodong. The Jibu 2nd Division also controls Shidu and is advancing towards Galadan, Daremi, and Mendu. A staff officer rushed forward to report urgently. With a slight chin, Cai Ye took the telegram and examined it before asking, where are the 3rd and 4th Infantry Divisions currently located? Young Marshal. General Lu Zhihui reported the whereabouts of his troops to the headquarters an hour ago. The 3rd Infantry Division has resumed the railway transportation from Bogu to Yecheng, and now it has arrived in Mayatampian, continuing southward. The 4th Infantry Division arrived in Baima yesterday and successively seized towns such as Dandu, Donga, and Jiagu. It is advancing westward along the coastline and is expected to arrive in Shidu by the evening. In addition, the 3rd Infantry Division has engaged in combat with the British Army in Impel. General Zhang Lingfu called the headquarters, hoping to transfer the 2nd Artillery Division to Shidong. The staff officer added in detail. So far, except for the 2nd Infantry Division remaining in the Golden Triangle region, all 3 infantry divisions, 2 artillery divisions, and 3 machine infantry divisions under Cai Ye's command have been deployed, with a total of 130,000 troops deployed in this battle, demonstrating Cai Ye's determination to control the entire Burma. Telegram to Lu Jiwei and Long Wenwen, Infantry 3rd Division and Infantry 4th Division to cooperate with Infantry 1st Division and Infantry 2nd Division to clean up the remaining forces of the British Burmese Army in the Arakan and Dana Shaolin areas. If there are any changes in the British Indian Army or British troops stationed in Malaysia, there is no need to report and they can dispose of them on their own. In just one sentence, let those so-called gentlemen who never set the sun see the 5,000-year-old Chinese iron-blooded wind. Also, tell Zhang Lingfu that the 2nd Artillery Division is already on its way, and I don't want to see a British army in Impel and Cackle. His gaze was like a blade, and Cai Ye's face showed a strong ambition and contempt for the British army. The last feudal dynasty in Myanmar was the Gongbang dynasty, which once dominated the Indo-Chinese peninsula and fought several wars with the Qing dynasty, achieving 4 victories. According to international practice, the legal basis for the entire Myanmar territory comes from the Gongbang dynasty, which controlled an area of 800,000 square kilometers, including Upper Myanmar, Lower Myanmar, Golden Triangle, Dana Shaolin, and Arakan. As vassal states, Assam, Manipur, and Cackle were incorporated into the territory of British India by the British Army. At present, Cai Ye's army has destroyed the ruling bases of the British Burmese Army in Upper Burma, Lower Burma, Golden Triangle, Dana Shaolin, and Arakan. It can be said that they have controlled these places, leaving only Yangon as a solitary city. The British Army was not willing to give up on such a large Burma, and they mobilized the British and Indian Army to gather in Impel, ready to enter Burma for battle at any time. To fully control Burma, it is necessary to eliminate this threat, and Cai Ye wants Zhang Lingfu to take advantage of this opportunity to reclaim the 2 vassal states of Manipur and Cackle, thereby planting nails in South Asia and preparing for future expansion. Yes. After listening, the staff officer's eyes flickered with brilliance, saluted the military, and turned around to leave the front line. After he left, a refined middle-aged man in military uniform came to Cai Ye's side. When Cai Ye saw the newcomer, he showed a warm smile on his face and said, "Why did you come? General Tang has already come to the front line, why can't I, as the chief of the general staff, come?" The refined middle-aged man looked at Cai Ye and joked. Hee. Cai Ye scratched his head, feeling a bit embarrassed. The person who came was none other than Jiang Bailey, Cai Ye's former friend and one of the 3 outstanding non-commissioned officers. Back then, Cai Ye passed away due to illness. Thanks to the care of Jiang Bailey and his wife, Cai Ye was able to grow up safely. Later, when he studied at the Berlin Military Academy, it was also Jiang Bailey's relationship. It can be said that Jiang Bailey and his wife gave him the same care as his parents, treating him as if he were his own child. Therefore, Cai Ye had great respect for the Jiang Bailey couple and invited them south in 1937. "You kid." Jiang Bailey shook his head and said helplessly, "Yangon won't grow wings and fly anymore. What are you doing in such a hurry? The entire army follows the orders of the Major General, and the 5 million Chinese in the Golden Triangle respect you. Some things are already urgent." The words fell. Cai Ye put away his cynical expression and said seriously, "What is Uncle referring to? In the past, our army relied on the Southwest, and you gained the support of the Southwest Army and the people under the name of Major Marshal. But now it's different from the past. Once you capture Yangon, all Burma will enter your hands, covering 800,000 square kilometers and 20 million people. In the world, this is the size of a country, and the name, Shaoshuai, is no longer useful. Jiang Bailey said solemnly. If the northeast king is Zhang Zuolin, then the southwest king must be Cai Ye, and in terms of seniority, Cai E is far superior to Zhang Zuolin. Zhang Xiaoluzi, as a young general, is not even worse than Cai Ye. Cai Ye started from scratch and only won the Golden Triangle with the support of 2 regiments, Long Yun and Lu Xiang. Now, he has hundreds of thousands of troops and is about to control the entire Burma. Chapter 2. Taking chestnuts from the fire, I want to be the king of the world. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Uncle, this is testing me. With a slight smile, Cai Ye looked east and said in a deep voice, our country has been invaded by the Japanese invaders, our mountains and rivers are stained with blood, and the people are struggling to make a living. As sons and daughters of Yan and Huang, how can the people of China abandon them? My father devoted his whole life to the country. As the son of Cai E, if he only lived in a small corner, he would be sorry for the word Shaoshuai. However, there are numerous domestic forces and internal conflicts within the government. Our army is weak, and hasty intervention may have a counterproductive effect. Especially since the Japanese army has completely blocked the coastal areas, the only external channels are the Burma Road and the Yunnan-Vietnam Railway. The strength of the French army in Southeast Asia is far less than that of the British army, not to mention that French Indian is adjacent to Guangdong and Guangxi. As long as the little devil has no problem, he will certainly block the Yunnan-Vietnam Railway. At that time, the Yunnan-Myanmar Highway will be the only way of life. It is impossible for Britain, America, and France to watch China fall completely, and support materials will inevitably be transported to the capital via the Burma Road. Ensuring the Yunnan-Myanmar Highway is to ensure the overall situation of the domestic resistance war, while also being able to train new armies and be ready to support domestic operations at any time. Uncle, this war is just the beginning, and its scale will far exceed that of World War I. It's not just the little devils who want to break free from order, but also countries like Germany and polar bears. It's unknown who the enemy and friends are. What? Is this just the beginning? Jiang Bailey's pupils tightened sharply and he blurted out, do you think World War II will break out? If anyone in China knows the world situation the best, it is none other than Jiang Bailey. In 1935, he was appointed as a senior advisor to the nationalist government, and the following year he went to Europe and America to conduct military inspections, knowing the situation in Europe and America very well. Isn't Uncle thinking so? The German leader, as well as his little brothers Mussolini and Franco, were all restless. The polar bears have not forgotten the shame of the founding war, they have already completed industrialization. With deep eyes, Cai Ye spat out a few words in succession. Who? Taking a deep breath, Jiang Bailey was calming down the turbulent waves in his heart. Although the most strategic general in China had long speculated that war might break out in Europe, he could not imagine it being a brutal battle that spanned more than one world war, involving 60 countries and regions with a population of over 2 billion, from Europe to Asia, from the Atlantic to the Pacific. This world war laid the foundation for a long period of time in the future and allowed a new hegemon to replace the old one. Uncle. Sometimes, crises often bring opportunities. China has already sunk to this point, do you still care about the danger? Looking at Jiang Bailey with uncertain eyes, Cai Ye added. What do you mean? Jiang Bailey raised his head and gazed at him. This will be a match between Germany, Japan, Italy, and Spain against England, France, the Soviet Union, and the United States, and the top 10 countries in the world will all be involved. The whole world will reshuffle, no one knows who the ultimate winner is. Southeast Asia covers an area of approximately 4.57 million square kilometers, South Asia covers an area of approximately 4.37 million square kilometers, and Oceania covers an area of 8.97 million square kilometers. There are approximately 190 million people living in these places, while in China, there are only 11.41 million square kilometers and nearly 500 million people living there. The magnificent China, with 5,000 years of civilization, why shrink back in East Asia? Only a few hundred years of Western civilization, white people have spread all over the world. Once World War II intensifies, do Western powers still have time to pay attention to the East? Not to mention Southeast Asia, South Asia, even Australia, they may not be able to consider it. This is the best opportunity for us. Since the end of the Qing dynasty, the domestic warlord forces have not yet distinguished themselves, and there are still numerous factions within the nationalist government. When the Japanese invaders expelled the Japanese, they all fought together, ultimately losing only China's national defense strength. Joining our army will only make this internal battle more intense. It's better to step out of the chess game and have outsiders support one side's power and integrate the others. In this way, our army is controlling the south, and China is in the east. With the cooperation of the two, which country in the world can withstand our rise? Speaking of this, Cai Ye's face was filled with fervent anticipation, and his eyes were filled with determination. It was not until this moment that Jiang Bailey realized that the young man he had seen since childhood had transformed to a height that he was shocked by. Whether it was his vision or his cunning, he stood at the top of the human race. Send me orders, the general attack begins. With a big wave of his hand, Cai Ye said in a deep voice. Yes. The staff officer waiting on the side immediately issued orders to the infantry division and artillery division on the Yangon front line through the radio. On a shady hillside less than 5 kilometers away from Yangon, hundreds of large-caliber artillery pieces are covered in grass-green camouflage. Soldiers wearing dark green military uniforms wait quietly, waiting for orders to launch a general attack. Dee-dee, dee-dee. A crisp electronic sound could be heard from the semi-underground structure in the forest, which was the headquarters of the Artillery 1st Division. A young man with a determined face was wearing a straight military uniform on his upper body and knee-high leather boots on his lower body, constantly pacing the command center with his hands on his back. Master. At this moment, a telecommunications soldier with an excited expression handed the transcribed telegram to Yang Zhihua. Commander-in-Chief orders. The overall attack has officially begun. Okay. Yang Zhihua, the commander of the 1st Artillery Division, took the telegram and strode out of the command center, shouting loudly, "Everyone has it. Remove camouflage, adjust gun positions, and focus on various elements." Yes. The artillery on the battlefield operated rapidly like newly started machines, one by one lifting the grass-green camouflage and exposing the cannons completely in the daytime. The black holes in the muzzle were aimed at Yangon not far away. Squeak, squeak. Accompanied by the sound of mechanical friction echoing on the hillside, 36 German-made 150 mm howitzers and 108 105 mm howitzers adjusted their positions one after another, aiming at all targets. This massive artillery group revealed a ferocious side. Under the sunlight, the dark barrel refracts no light at all, and the absorbing coating absorbs all the light. Artillery soldiers stared at Yangon not far away with fiery eyes, which was the purpose of their trip and even the goal of the entire army. Get ready. Fill the shells. Yang Zhihua issued the order. Fill the shells. Fill the shells. Fill the shells. A messenger wandered between each cannon, clearly conveying this command. Wow! At the moment of hearing the sound, all the artillery began to move, and the auxiliary soldiers responsible for passing the shells behind them had already stuffed the shells into the barrel. The artillery at the gun position clanged and closed the bolt. Number 1 is in position. Number 2 in position. Number 3 in position. Dot. Artillery squad leaders shouted loudly one by one. All 108 howitzers are ready to fire at any time. Chapter 3. Conquer Yangon and completely annihilate the British Burmese army. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. 3 rapid shots. Let go. Standing high, Yang Zhihua gave the messenger a glance, and the entire artillery position seemed to boil. Bang! 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 The already prepared artillery suddenly pulled the line of fire, and the roaring sound echoed through the earth. Orange flames surged out of the gun barrel, while white smoke spread out, blocking everyone's sight. In a hazy manner, each large shell was shot out with unprecedented power, igniting flames in intense friction with the air, transforming into large fireballs that were particularly eye-catching. The roar came from the rear of the position, and figures wearing dark green military uniforms stood up from the trench, staring blankly at the sky. I saw beautiful parabolas drawn by large fireballs, falling in the direction of the British Burmese military positions. Fuck. Dodgetha shells. The British colonel who noticed this scene had a frightened expression and shouted loudly. However, neither British nor Burmese soldiers heard him because the shells were already falling and the sharp whistling echoed through the entire position outside Yangon. Bang! The terrifying explosion echoed from all directions. It was a heavy shell fired from a 150mm howitzer. At the moment when the flames shone, the shock wave spread at a visible speed to the naked eye, destroying all surrounding buildings and life. Countless smoke and dust rose up, faintly forming a mushroom-like cloud. This is just the beginning. A total of 144 grenades and shells fell, and huge fireballs exploded on the ground. The flames connected and covered a 3-kilometer radius, with flying fire snakes devouring everything. Chick. The wood and burlap on the British Burmese battlefield burned rapidly, even the clothes on the soldiers were ignited. Ah! Help! Help! Everywhere were cries for help, painful screams and screams. There are English, Chinese, and Burmese, and the British Burmese army has suffered the most terrifying blow in history. They never expected to have the privilege of experiencing the power of German artillery clusters in the Far East and underdeveloped Southeast Asia. The British Empire was a typical maritime power, with all armies dependent on the navy, and the arms industry cluster focused on warships. Although artillery technology was at the pinnacle of the world and not inferior to Germany, the British Army did not enjoy this benefit. The British Army also used a large number of weapons and equipment from World War I, especially artillery, with large calibers mainly consisting of 94mm mountain guns, 114.3mm field guns, 140mm howitzers, and 203mm additional howitzers. The main force of the British Burmese Army has only 1 division and 2 infantry brigades, with a maximum caliber of 114.3mm field artillery, which is not a level of competition at all. Command. All troops charge towards Yangon. In the trench, Chu Yunfei, the commander of the 1st Infantry Division, clearly saw through a telescope that the British Burmese positions had turned into scorched earth, and immediately issued an order. Yes. The Chief of Staff made great contributions and conveyed the orders to the entire division, including the 3 infantry regiments, the reconnaissance battalion of the division, and the security company. A large shadow rushed out of the trench, with nearly 15,000 soldiers wearing dark green military uniforms and rubber shoes, holding Mauser K98 rifles with enthusiasm on their faces, charging towards the city ahead with all their might. The bright bayonets refracted a chilling light in the sunlight. When they stepped onto the British Burmese military positions, the ground was covered in craters, scorched black, and there were many scattered shrapnel. The mud beneath their feet may be human tissue, and it was impossible to distinguish between soil and meat. This was simply a hell on earth. Class monitor, there's another Air Gue Z here. Bang! The squad leader aimed at a struggling Burmese soldier and pulled the trigger. A 7.92mm caliber bullet passed through his chest, and a blood flower bloomed. The Burmese soldier fell straight back, his eyes filled with confusion. He couldn't understand why he would still be killed even though he had already laid down his weapon. Air Hu, and you too. I would like to emphasize once again that, except for the British Army, all will be executed to the death. If facing the British Army who haven't laid down their weapons, don't hesitate and shoot immediately. Do you understand? The class monitor sternly scanned the 10 soldiers under his hands. There are not many veteran soldiers under Cai Ye who have seen blood before. Most of them are new recruits who have been trained for more than a year. The reason for launching this battle is not only to occupy all of Burma, but also to train soldiers and face greater challenges. There are over 100 ethnic groups in Myanmar, mainly consisting of 8 major ethnic groups: Burmese, Kachin, Kaya, Karen, Chin, Mon, Rakhine, and Shan. There are over 1 million Chinese and overseas Chinese, and there are as many as 200 Chinese language schools alone, accounting for 5% of the total population. Among them, the Shan, Meng, and Kachin ethnic groups are the Dai, Hua, and Jingpa ethnic groups of China. The Kachin, Kei, and Chin ethnic groups are all descendants of the Chang people, while the Karen ethnic group is a descendant of the Di ethnic group. These are classified into assimilable ethnic groups. The Ruakai people, also known as the Arakan people, live in the Ruakai Mountains area along the southwest coast of Myanmar, with a population of less than 1 million and no threat. In the past 3 years, Cai Ye has introduced many impoverished Chinese and assimilated Shan ethnic groups from China, and the actual controlled population in the Golden Triangle is 5 million. The Kerman tribe is the largest ethnic group in Myanmar, with over 10 million people, which is beyond the scope of assimilation for Chinese people. So, Cai Ye's order to the army was to leave no Burmese among the British Burmese army, in order to completely cut off the armed forces among the Burmese people and prepare for the comprehensive cleansing of the Burmese people. As for the British army, it is a valuable commodity that can be used to exchange supplies with the British Empire. Yes. The 12 new recruits felt a chill in their hearts, earnestly responding. This scene happened in every corner of the battlefield, and the veteran squad leaders were teaching the new recruits a lesson to get used to the battlefield as quickly as possible. Bang! 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 Scattered gunshots kept ringing, and the shelling did not completely eliminate the 1st Division of the British Burmese Army. 2/3 of the enemies were scattered and evaded, surviving. Under the search of the 1st Infantry Division, they were pulled out one by one. All Burmese people and the British Army who wanted to resist were shot or stabbed through their bodies with bayonets, and blood flowed all over the ground, resulting in death. Yangon, the capital of Myanmar, has completely opened its chest to Cai Ye. From the sky, deep green is spreading towards the center of the city. It belongs to Cai Ye's soldiers and army, announcing the arrival of a new owner to this city. Chapter 4. System Upgrade, 100000G43 Semi-Self. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. There stands a 3-story red brick building in the center of Yangon City, with a unique multiple herringbone-shaped sloping roof, circular corner towers, and protruding belly windows. It looks very much like a church, giving people a sense of solemnity, mystery, and seriousness. This is the center of British rule in Myanmar, the headquarters of the British Burmese Army. As the commander of the British Burmese Army, General Hutton was discussing with Major General Scott, the commander of the British Burmese 1st Division, to develop a more secure defense plan when he heard a sharp whistling sound, followed by a earth-shattering explosion, and even the walls of the headquarters were trembling. Whether it was Hutton or Scott, they immediately recognized that this was a heavy artillery gun with a caliber of at least 100 mm. Their faces darkened and their hearts were raised to their throats. Can the 1st Division of the British Burmese Army, consisting of only 1 Indian brigade and 1 Burmese brigade, really withstand such fierce shelling? No one has a bottom in their heart. What they didn't expect was that the shelling had stopped in less than 10 seconds, and Hutton quickly ordered the staff of the headquarters to inquire about the situation on the front line. Step on. The sound of hurried footsteps came from outside the door, and the British colonel and staff rushed into the headquarters hall with a panicked expression. Schwa. Major General Hutton and Major General Scott immediately caught their attention. "Sir. The enemy has already entered the city." The British colonel's staff spoke up. Boom. This was like a bolt from the blue hitting the hearts of a group of senior British military officers. The enemy has entered Yangon city, which indicates that the 1st Division of the British Burmese Army, which they considered a life-saving straw, has completely lost its combat effectiveness. Otherwise, it is impossible not to stop the enemy. "Sir. We have no other choice." Major General Scott, commander of the 1st Division of the British Burmese Army, said bitterly. All the British officers present coincidentally lowered their heads, and the headquarters fell into a dead silence. As early as a day ago, Cai Ye ordered Zhu Ziming special forces to bypass Yangon and occupy Kun Qiangong on the southern coast of Yangon, completely blocking the Yangon estuary with mines. Not to mention warships, not a single sampan could pass through. The only airport in Myanmar is located in Mague, but there is no direct railway from Yangon to Mague. The only way is to get off at the station in Pygmy and transfer to a car to take the road. However, now the railway from Yangon to Pygmy is completely controlled by the enemy, and these officers of the British and Burmese Army are unable to escape. Ah! I'm sorry to the British Empire, I'm sorry to Her Majesty the Queen. General Scott, surrender to the enemy. General Hu Dun, the commander of the British Burmese Army, spoke with difficulty. After speaking these words, his face seemed to have aged more than 10 years. He will become the first colonial governor of the British Empire to surrender after losing all its colonies and armies. Yes, sir. Major General Scott, the commander of the 1st Division of the British Burmese Army, felt a glimmer of happiness in his eyes and quickly led his men down to arrange. At the same time, the front line command post. Ding dong, congratulations on your ruling population exceeding 20 million, upgrading. Upgrade completed, please check with the host. As the familiar mechanical prompts sounded in his heart, Cai Ye, who was pondering, suddenly looked up and a surprised expression appeared on his face. In front of him appeared a colorful light curtain that only he could see. Host. Cai Ye. Age. 22, level. Level 3, Kingdom, note. The next upgrade requires a population of over 100 million or an area of 10 million square kilometers. This belongs exclusively to his Golden Finger's strongest imperial system, which has been bound since 3 years ago and can be checked in once a day. The higher the level, the better the reward for signing in. Different levels correspond to different titles, for example. Level 0 is Bogua, Level 1 is Hogua, Level 2 is Dukgua, and Level 3 is Kingdom. The condition for upgrading from Level 0 to Level 1 is that the population under its jurisdiction exceeds 100,000 or the area reaches 10,000 square kilometers. The conditions for upgrading from Level 1 to Level 2 are that the population under its jurisdiction exceeds 1 million, or the area reaches 100,000 square kilometers. The condition for upgrading from Level 2 to Level 3 is that the population under its jurisdiction exceeds 10 million, or the area reaches 1 million square kilometers. In fact, it's quite simple to go from Level 0 to Level 2. The Golden Triangle itself covers an area of 200,000 square kilometers, and the local population is only a few hundred thousand. Cai Ye, along with the 2 most elite strengthening regiments of the Yunnan and Sichuan armies, swept through this area at that time. Upgrading from Level 2 to Level 3 has been a hurdle for him for 2 years. Regardless of the conditions, it is not easy. The area of Myanmar is less than 1 million square kilometers, which means it has a large population. Otherwise, it would not meet this requirement. In fact, the 3rd level has not yet emerged as a beginner's village. The strongest imperial system, as the name suggests, supports Cai Ye in establishing the world's strongest empire, while the 4th level is the empire. Firstly, he must control more than 10 million square kilometers of land or 100 million people. However, Cai Ye did not hesitate on this point, but silently recited in his heart, "System, start checking in." Ding dong, congratulations on the successful check that IN of the host. Reward. 100000 G43 semi-automatic rifles. Oh. Upon hearing the system prompt, Cai Ye's smile grew stronger. Previously, the rewards for check.in were limited to pre-World War II. Military categories included weapons, equipment, and production lines for finished products such as MG-34 general-purpose machine guns, K-98 rifles, MP-38 submachine guns, and M1 Garand semi-automatic rifles, while civilian categories included finished products and formulas such as sulfonamide drugs and nylon materials. As his faction level increased to level 3, the reward for check.in had been changed to something from World War II, which gave him more confidence in dealing with the upcoming World War II. Marshal. Good news, good news. Just as Cai Ye was immersed in the joy of system upgrade, the deputy staff officer burst into the headquarters with a telegram in high spirits. Oh. The 1st Infantry Division has already taken control of Yangon. Looking up slightly, Cai Ye asked without hesitation. Since the system has been upgraded, it indicates that the front-line forces have indeed solved the problem of the British Burmese Army, and even seized the British Burmese Army headquarters, completely shattering the British Burmese Army's dominant position in Myanmar. Cai Ye has become the de facto highest ruler of all Myanmar. Ah! The young commander is wise. The deputy staff officer was first taken aback, then looked at Cai Ye with a respectful expression on his face. This undisclosed news was actually guessed by the young Marshal first. The young Marshal is indeed a divine person, with a clear mind. This is a call from Chu Yunfei, the commander of the 1st Infantry Division. British Burmese Army Commander Hu Dun, British Burmese Army 1st Division Commander Scott, and officers from the British Burmese Army headquarters are requesting surrender from our army. He wants you to come and preside over this ceremony. Jiang Bailey took the telegram from the Deputy Chief of Staff and opened the reading. I didn't expect Chu Yunfei, the great Han of the 3 Jin dynasty, to have such a sweet and charming personality. Cai Ye joked, "Uncle, since he has already arranged everything, let's go see each other." It's also good. Jiang Bailey nodded in agreement. Immediately, the two of them, escorted by guards, drove to the city of Yangon. Chapter 5. Dust settles, British generals humiliate and seek. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Doodle. Yangon City, which had just experienced a battle, appeared particularly lonely, with broken walls and debris everywhere, and the ground was scorched black. The officers and soldiers of the 1st Infantry Division are tidying up the mess, gathering all the useful things together, not even the shrapnel. A military jeep with a 001 license plate was driving along the road, and the sound of the car's engine caught the attention of many people. Marshal. Along the way, all figures wearing dark green military uniforms coincidentally stopped their work and saluted solemnly. Sitting in the car, Cai Ye looked at these cute soldiers with mixed feelings in his heart and waved in response. That's the young Marshal. Marshal has seen us. The officers and soldiers present were filled with excitement. For them, Cai Ye is not only a commander, but also a life-saving benefactor. The former Golden Triangle region was a mix of fish and dragons, with various forces intertwined and constantly fighting. It was not until Cai Ye emerged from the air and cleared all the ghosts, snakes, and gods within 200,000 square kilometers that the locals were able to live a peaceful life. Later, Cai Ye opened a large number of factories, repaired bridges and paved roads, and established schools, which greatly changed the appearance of the Golden Triangle region and made it the wealthiest place in Myanmar. People sincerely appreciated Cai Ye's actions, and young people actively joined the military. 2 years ago, when you first proposed your plan to go south, I thought it was a very comical thing. Since ancient times, Southeast Asia has been regarded as a barbarian land, and successive unified dynasties have never cared about the exiled Chinese people. Even if Southeast Asian ethnic groups and Chinese people share the same origin, no one feels that they can be educated. Until now, with all Burma under control, you have opened up a new world for China with your own efforts, and can even feed back the domestic market. I am proud of you. Taking a deep glance at Cai Ye, Jiang Bailey exclaimed with emotion. Once, he accompanied Cai Ye south with his family, but couldn't bear to see his child, whom he regarded as his own, die young in a strange place. Who would have thought that less than 3 years later, the whole Southeast Asia has undergone tremendous changes. Cai Ye has opened up a new world belonging to him and the Chinese people by almost starting from scratch, which is simply unimaginable. Uncle praised me too much. I remember when I was a child, you once told me in poetry, Xiaoya, 10 days that there was a saying. Yi Yi Jin Jian. My father hopes that I can illuminate a country still in darkness like that flame, so that 40,000 people can see the raging wildfire and reignite hope. What I am doing now is to uphold my father's will and your teachings. China will once again stand tall in the forest of the world, presenting itself in a new and powerful posture in the eyes of the great powers, and reclaiming the glory that once belonged to that heavenly kingdom. With his eyes burning, Cai Ye's mouth spewed out a resolute and confident statement. Okay, I'll wait and see. Upon hearing these words, Jiang Bailey responded with great satisfaction. At this moment, the military jeep had already arrived at the unique British Burmese military headquarters in the center of Yangon city during their conversation. Marshal. Chief of the General Staff. A group of figures dressed in dark green military uniforms, who had already been waiting on the side, rushed forward one after another. Led by a tall and handsome young man, Chu Yunfei, who had previously served as the commander of the 358th Regiment of the Jin Sui Army and is currently the commander of the 1st Infantry Division. Chu Yunfei took 3 steps and divided into 2, then stepped forward and opened the car door, welcoming Cai Ye and Jiang Bailey down. In this Battle of Burma, Chu Yunfei and the 1st Division should be the top performers. I have ordered the delivery of meat, eggs, candies, biscuits, and other supplies from the Golden Triangle region to reward all the officers and soldiers of the 1st Division. After the end of this campaign, the General Staff will reward and award based on merit, and issue commendation orders and rewards together. Looking around the crowd, Cai Ye smiled and spoke. Yes. All the middle and senior officers of the 1st Infantry Division on site responded loudly, and their faces were filled with joy. Marshal, please come this way. At this moment, Chu Yunfei stepped forward to guide Cai Ye. Okay. Cai Ye nodded and strode towards the headquarters of the British Burmese Army. Salute. The soldiers on both sides raised their heads and straightened their chests, with Mauser K-98 rifles bayonets on them, slung across their chests. A group of white people emerged from the British Burmese military headquarters, with the lowest rank being Lieutenant Colonel, led by a Lieutenant General and a Major General. 2 British brigadiers held up the rice flag and the white flag respectively, with each white man's face extremely gloomy and his eyes filled with unwillingness. Commander-in-Chief of the British Empire in Burma, Hutton, and Commander of the 1st Division of the British Burmese Army, Scott, surrender to your army. 2 British generals bent over and spread out their hands, handing over their command knives. Shwa. Cai Ye passed over Hu Dun's command knife directly and handed it to Chu Yunfei. As for Scott's commanding knife, it was taken over by Jiang Bailey, and his level was not enough for Cai Ye to personally surrender. Subsequently, the British generals present stepped forward one by one, handed over their guns and command knives, disarmed all, and walked to the side with their heads down to stand still. In just a short moment, the surrender ceremony, which was recorded in history, came to an end. This was the first time that the Chinese had accepted the surrender of the British Army as a unit. Your Excellency, General. I hope your army can provide humanitarian treatment to our army in accordance with the Geneva Conventions. General Hu Dun, the commander of the British Burmese Army, made a plea to Cai Ye in a pleading tone. Your Excellency, General. Our army will strictly abide by the Geneva Treaty. As long as the British Army has not committed blood debts to Chinese and overseas Chinese, they will receive humanitarian treatment. Regarding the wounded, our army will provide medical treatment and negotiate with your country regarding the issue of prisoners of war. Facing Hu Dun's gaze, Cai Ye said calmly. He doesn't have the habit of being a Virgin Mary and is lenient towards those white pigs who oppress Chinese and overseas Chinese. On behalf of the British Empire, I thank the General for his kindness. General Hu Dun, the commander of the British Burmese army, knew that this was already Cai Ye's greatest tolerance, and as prisoners, they had no right to negotiate terms. Uncle. Yangon may not be the best choice. But so far, if our army wants to completely control Burma, it is most suitable to use this place as the ruling center for the time being. The military and government officials still need you to arrange and arrive here as soon as possible. The British military arsenal and colonial banks must be counted as soon as possible. At the same time, we have sent diplomatic notes to the ambassadors of countries such as the UK, France, the US, Germany, and the Soviet Union in China, hoping to establish equal and friendly diplomatic relations with all countries, with a focus on Germany, the Soviet Union, and the United States. Speaking of which, Cai Ye's eyes sparkled with precision. Understood. Jiang Bailey is very clear about his meaning. The most dissatisfied with the hegemony of the British Empire were the Germans, polar bears, and the United States. Now that they have taken British Burma, it is equivalent to slapping the British Empire, which is undoubtedly a welcome event for Germany, the Soviet Union, and the United States. Therefore, the country that recognizes their international status the fastest is likely to be Germany, the Soviet Union, and the United States. Chapter 6. I bet your gun has no bullets. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chu Yunfei. Watching Jiang Bailey leave, Cai Ye's gaze fell on the commander of the 1st Infantry Division. Please give orders, Major. Chu Yunfei's expression was solemn as he said. The Myanmar Railway runs north to Myitkyina, south to the Coconut City, east to Lashio, and west to Beam, in the shape of a fishbone. In addition to the main line from Yangon to Myitkyina, there are also the main lines from Mandalay to Lashio, from Bogu to Yuching, from Yangon to Paimu, and from Daki to Dongji. Lu Jiahui's Infantry 3rd Division has taken over the Jibu 2nd Division's garrison in the Denashilan area. Long Wenwen's Infantry 4th Division is rushing to Shidu to prepare to take over the Jibu 1st Division's garrison in the Arakan area, and Zhou Weiguo's Infantry 2nd Division is also moving to Mandalay. In the future, the Infantry Division and Artillery Division will serve as defense forces for Lower Burma. Therefore, the top priority is to handle the British prisoners of war and arrange for personnel from the Golden Triangle to enter Yangon. Cai Ye spoke solemnly. The Golden Triangle region has a total of 4 infantry divisions, 3 mechanized infantry divisions, and 2 artillery divisions, totaling 150,000 personnel. Among them, mechanized infantry divisions serve as mobile forces to support various regions at any time, and the 4 infantry divisions must undertake local defense tasks. Myanmar is divided into 4 regions. Upper Myanmar, Lower Myanmar, Arakan, and Dana Shalin. The capital of Lower Myanmar is located in Yangon, less than 40 kilometers from the coastline. This is also why he arranged his artillery division here to prevent British warships from launching surprise attacks on Yangon. The 1st Infantry Division was formed by the Sichuan Army and Yunnan Army, which were the first to follow Cai Ye in the battle against the Golden Triangle, with the strongest combat effectiveness. Next, Yangon will become the center of governance over all of Burma, and the task undertaken by the Infantry Division will be the most severe. Yes. Chu Yunfei responded with a solemn expression. The town of Leton, approximately 120 kilometers northwest of Yangon, is one of the most important transportation hubs in Myanmar. The Yangon Pygmy Railway to the north and the Bushing-Liberton Railway to the southwest connect here, and there are also highways connecting Yangon to the south and Renan Chang to the north. On the west side, it is close to the Bogu Mountains and has great concealment. You can immediately send the division's engineering camp to build the prisoners' camp. After screening the British prisoners of all Burmese prisoners, they were all detained in the Libertine prisoners' camp. Apart from providing medical care, these British soldiers had to engage in labor to obtain food and daily necessities. Do you understand? Understood. Chu Yunfei nodded seriously. Well, if there's nothing else, you can go down and arrange it first. With a wave of his hand, Cai Ye gave the order to expel the guest. Yes. Chu Yunfei just left the British Burmese Army headquarters and arranged for the engineering battalion to rush to Libertine. Unconsciously, time had already arrived in the afternoon, and the warm autumn sun inevitably made people feel drowsy. Mague, about 500 kilometers away from Yangon, is located between the Rakhine and Bogu Mountains. The Irrawaddy River has washed out a large fertile plain, and it is only 50 kilometers away from the Renanxiang oil field to the north. The British Army set up the only airport in Mague for the convenience of obtaining oil from Renanxiang and traveling between Chittagong and Impel. The British Army stationed at the airport only had one battalion, and the airport was surrounded by barbed wire. Although it appeared to be heavily guarded, there were actually leaks everywhere. The British Army did not even conduct daily patrols, indicating how low their vigilance was. These British troops from the mainland never expected a unit wearing dark green military uniforms to quietly touch the airport, and under the cover of taller plants than humans, they could not find their traces at all. Captain. I think we are completely overthinking it. The appearance of these British troops is not like an army, they are simply a mob. A military officer said enthusiastically. You're right. Order to deal with the British Army as quickly as possible and seize the airport. The sharp eyes of Yanhuang, resembling those of a falcon, burst out with a chilling cold light and issued an order. Yes. Immediately, soldiers lurking in the grass launched an attack with Thompson submachine guns. Without the British noticing anything, the soldiers had already appeared in front of them and pulled the trigger in awe. Da-da-da. Da-da-da. The crisp sound of gunfire, like the sound of a typewriter, echoed through the outskirts of the airport. 11.43 mm large caliber bullets spewed out from the muzzle flames, covering the British troops guarding the gate and turning them into sieves. What? Counter-stack, quick counter-stack. All the British troops were alarmed, and they panicked as they raised their Lionfield rifles, wanting to counterattack. Unfortunately, the thousands of officers and soldiers from the 1st Battalion of the Secret Service did not give the British any chance. The dark green figure rushed into the airport through the gate, and the power of the Thompson submachine gun was fully demonstrated at such a close distance. Wherever they passed, not a single British soldier survived by chance, and their bodies were beaten to pieces, splattering with blood and flesh all over the ground. Brothers! Kill me! Yanhuang took the lead and started working with both hands, playing with a pair of Mauser C96 pistols to perfection, repeatedly knocking the heads of the British Army. Quickly, they arrived at the only reinforced concrete building in front of the airport, and several soldiers rushed in. Put his gun down. Accompanied by a string of English words, a fat-headed white officer held a revolver and trembled as he spoke to Yanhuang. I bet there are no bullets in your gun. Yanhuang Silk was fearless and spoke calmly. What? There was a hint of doubt in the eyes of the white officer, as he couldn't understand Chinese. After only hesitating for a moment, a figure had already approached him and seized the revolver. Do you believe in your own eyes? Sometimes your eyes can deceive you. Yanhuang opened the revolver magazine, revealing a full load of bullets. You. This scene completely plunged the white officer into despair. Report to Captain. The airport has been taken down, killing 347 British soldiers and capturing 266 prisoners. The seized weapons and ammunition have not been counted yet. However, the aircraft parked on the runway and the aircraft in the hangar have been counted. This time, General Feng Yong should treat you to a drink, with 30 fighter jets and 15 bombers. The major, dressed in dark green military uniform, excitedly reported to the inside. Okay. Immediately send a telegram to the column headquarters. Yanhuang's expression remained calm as water, and his eyes calmly issued an order. Yes. The major turned around and left the airport office building. The entire British Burmese Air Force has been disbanded by the 1st Brigade of the Special Service Brigade, and Magwe Airport has been replaced by a new owner. This also indicates that the last hope of the British Army in Myanmar has been completely shattered, and there is no basis for stubborn resistance. Chapter 7. The country's name is Yanhuang, and the bald head has not been refused. You are listening at novelfull.audio. On September 1, 1939, at 3 p.m., in Yangon, the residence of the Marshal. The small building that was originally the headquarters of the British Burmese Army has now become Cai Ye's office and residence, with figures wearing dark green military uniforms entering and exiting. Marshal. The deputy staff officer hurriedly entered the office with a telegram and said, "Special Forces, urgent telegram." Oh. Cai Ye, who was originally resting with his eyes closed, quickly took the telegram and flipped through it, his eyes shining brightly. The Secret Service squadron has brought good news, which may become the foundation for the Air Force to start. Prior to this, he had also signed in a batch of planes, but those were all training planes and could not be used in aerial combat. Unexpectedly, during the operation at Magwe Airport, the Special Service Squadron captured 30 Hurricane fighter jets and 15 Fairy light bombers. These planes are not considered advanced at present, but they are more than enough for use in Southeast Asia. Order. Air Force Director Feng Yong, Gao Zhiheng, Lu Tsuegang, Lu Yiqin, Li Guidan, and others will immediately rush to Magwe Airport. The defense of Magwe Airport is entrusted to the Air Force Ground Service. Yanhuang, the former commander of the 1st Battalion of the Secret Service Column, was transferred to the position of Deputy Director of the Major Marshal and promoted to the rank of Colonel. After contemplation, Cai Ye issued 2 orders in succession. Yes. The deputy staff officer on the side remembered it in his heart and turned around to leave. After he left, Jiang Bailey rushed in, holding a pile of documents in his hand, panting heavily. "Uncle. What are you?" Seeing this situation, Cai Ye couldn't help but be stunned. "Young Marshal. These are all things that the founding of the country must do. It includes 2 categories. Military and government affairs, which are very urgent." Jiang Bailey opened the files in his hands and spread them out in front of the table, then introduced, "Previously, we managed the place with the military. Now that we want to establish a brand new country, we must have a clear distinction between military and political power. The military is the military, and the local is the local. Firstly, it is necessary to establish the country's name in order to create a sense of belonging among the military, the people, and officials." The words fell. The atmosphere in the office has become somewhat hot. Establishing a country and establishing its name is not a small matter, as it symbolizes the emergence of a brand new country in Southeast Asia. Uncle's words make sense. I have already considered this matter in my heart. We are all descendants of the Chinese people, of the Yan, Huang, and Miao ethnic groups, and our bloodline is constantly torn apart, even if we are in 2 countries. Therefore, the new country should not be named after Yanhuang. Facing Jiang Bailey's gaze, Cai Ye spoke loudly and confidently. "Yanhuang. Okay, a country name is good." Jiang Bailey raised his hands in support of Cai Ye's proposal. Huaxia and Yanhuang, these 2 words have a deep sense of identification and significant meaning for Chinese people. Due to the grandeur of etiquette, it is called summer, the beauty of clothing is called beauty. This is the origin of China. And Yan and Huang represent the origin of the 50-100-year ancient Chinese civilization, which is Yan Emperor and Huang Emperor, these 2 ancient ancestors. Once Yan and Huang established their country, this national name can also win the support of the Chinese people, and many overseas Chinese living abroad have a new choice. Not only that, under the rule of Yan and Huang, the 5 million Chinese and 150,000 troops all gained cohesion and recognized their identities. The Yan and Huang armies established the three armies' general headquarters, which included the Army, Air Force, Navy, General Staff, Quarterly Supply, and Logistics departments. The Ministry of Military Supplies is responsible for overseeing military enterprises and providing qualified weapons, equipment, and ammunition to the military. The Logistics Department is not only responsible for ensuring the military's daily necessities, but also needs to oversee the engineering units. The Military Investigation Bureau and the Special Operations Bureau are independent of their respective departments and are directly under the jurisdiction of the General Headquarters of the Armed Forces. My uncle will continue to serve as the Chief of the General Staff, while Feng Yong, the former Air Force Director, will serve as the Minister of the Air Force. I have candidates for the positions of Minister of the Navy, Minister of Military Supplies, Minister of Logistics, and Minister of Engineering, but this Minister of the Army is really a bit difficult. In terms of government affairs, an executive yuan shall be established, which shall have jurisdiction over the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Transportation, the Ministry of Water Resources, the Ministry of Industry, the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Commerce, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Police, the Supreme Procuratorate, and the Supreme Court. Establish another bank, Yanhuang Bank, responsible for issuing currency and managing financial order, directly under the executive yuan. It's easy to arrange candidates for various departments of the executive yuan, but who should be invited by the premier? Then, Cai Ye added a few words, frowning and showing a hint of hesitation. Upon hearing this, Jiang Bailey is also considering the selection of the Minister of the Yan and Huang Army and the Premier of the Executive Yuan. Both candidates are important and require highly qualified and professional candidates, at least among 50,000 Chinese people. Young Marshal. How do you like Yang Hucheng and Li Lijun? After thinking for a while, Jiang Bailey mentioned two names in his mouth. Shua. Suddenly, Cai Ye's eyes shone brightly. It has to be said that the candidates mentioned by Jiang Bailey are indeed very suitable. Yang Hucheng was the leader of the Northwest Army after Feng Yuxiang, and even launched the Xi'an incident with Zhang Xiaoluzi, which facilitated the cooperation in resisting Japan. Whether it was his experience in commanding and fighting in the army, or his reputation, it was enough to be recognized by the proud soldiers and fierce generals of the Yan and Huang armies. As for Li Lijun, he was an elder of the Chinese Revolutionary League. In 1912, he was appointed as the governor of Jiangxi province. In July 1913, he set up the headquarters to fight against Yuan and became the commander-in-chief, opening the curtain of the Second Revolution. On December 25, 1915, he set up the banner of protecting the country and fighting against Yuan with Tang Jiao and Cai E, and served as the commander-in-chief of the Second Army of the National Army. Who else is dissatisfied with his appointment as the premier of Yanhuang administration? Uncle. Are you confident in inviting them over? Cai Ye asked with some uncertainty. As early as the end of 1937, Yang Hucheng returned to his home country to prepare for anti-Japanese work. He had been imprisoned by the nationalist government for almost 2 years now. If nothing unexpected happened, he should have been detained in Xiantian Cave in Shifeng, Guizhou province. Li Lijun has long been idle in the nationalist government. Since the September 18 incident, he has been traveling north and south, calling for unity and resistance against Japan. He personally went to Mount Lu to see his bald head, advocating for the cessation of civil war and the joint fight against the small devils. Later, he moved to Chongqing, but now he is afraid that his heart has turned to ashes. Marshal, don't forget that the Yunnan-Myanmar highway is the only lifeline for external development. If we want Yang Hucheng and his family to go south, the government will have to agree if they don't agree. Li Lijun is a person who is loyal to his country. I personally wrote a handwritten letter, and he naturally would not refuse to witness the great historical moment of the establishment of Yanhuang. Jiang Beili spoke confidently. Then let uncle handle this matter. I will carefully review the other documents before giving instructions. Cai Ye said solemnly. Okay. After receiving Cai Ye's answer, Jiang Beili left the marshal's office satisfied. Chapter 8. The Outbreak of World War II, A Divine Opportunity. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The transmission of information has a certain timeliness. On September 1, 1939, in the Far East, the Yan and Huang armies captured Yangon and completely annihilated the British and Burmese armies. Although it had not yet caused a stir in the world, the upheaval from Europe had already caused waves. Step on. The hurried footsteps disrupted the tranquility of the Marshal's official residence, and Jiang Beili's expression was both surprised and joyful, his mood not knowing how complicated it was. Uncle. Calm down, the sky won't fall. Watching his excitement, Cai Ye smiled slightly, as if he had anticipated it beforehand. At 4:40 this morning, the German army launched a flash attack on Poland. At 4:45, the German bomber group destroyed Poland's arsenal, airport, railway, road, and bridge. The German infantry mobilized tens of thousands of cannons for an hour of dumping, and then ground troops launched a full-line attack from the north, west, and southwest. The disguised friendly visiting German battleship Schleswig-Holstein anchored outside Danzig port fired at the Polish base. The Polish army was caught off guard and 500 frontline planes were destroyed at the airport before they could take off. Countless artillery, cars, and other supplies were destroyed before they could retreat, and transportation hubs and command centers were damaged, causing chaos for the troops. No one could have imagined that the German army, with 6 armored divisions, 4 light armored divisions, and 4 motorized divisions as their main assault forces, would tear through the defense line of approximately 800,000 Polish soldiers, consisting of 6 Polish army groups, in the flat western region of Poland. This is simply a miracle in the history of World War. Jiang Beili's voice was trembling. As a military strategist, he naturally understood that the German attack was a new direction that broke through the existing World Army attack mode. This was an unprecedented combat plan, as fast as the wind and as aggressive as fire. The rapid and deep advance force composed of German armored units and air force was invincible on long positions, and traditional infantry appeared bulky and rigid. This was the important reason why the large but outdated equipment of the Polish army was rapidly torn apart and surrounded. Blitzkrieg. A strange color appeared in the eyes of Cai Ye, who had turned his head. The German attack on Poland was just a rehearsal, and Littlebeard's ambition was not just that small. The real highlight moment is still ahead. No one could have predicted that the Germans would rely on Blitzkrieg to sweep across Europe, take over France in just over a month, and penetrate more than 300 kilometers into the polar bear territory in less than half a month. By then, the myth of the German invincibility would spread throughout the world. No one would doubt that the German army during World War II was one of the most powerful armies in modern human history. Young Marshal. Britain and France gave the Germans a 48-hour deadline as soon as the German army launched a flash attack on Poland. At this point, Jiang Beili added a sentence. He. Cai Ye sneered and said disdainfully, 48 hours. The German army has already completed the encirclement of the Danzig corridor Polish army. East Prussia connected the Germanic homeland together, and by the time Britain and France declared war, the yellow cauliflower would have cooled down. The predecessor of East Prussia was the Duchy of Prussia, and it is not an exaggeration to say that it was the land of Germanic prosperity. The Teutonic Knights, one of the 3 major knights of the Holy Roman Empire, originated here and deeply influenced the German army. Over 2 million Germanic people live on nearly 37,000 square kilometers of land. Although Poland gained independence from Russian territory after the end of World War I, completely separating Germany and East Prussia, the national sovereignty of East Prussia remained in the hands of Germany, with potential no less than that of its homeland. However, the German army had always faced the core of polar bears, and its position was no less than that of Berlin. Young Marshal. The German army has only 33 divisions on the Western Front, of which 12 divisions are still reserve forces. The French army has a total of 83 divisions, and if Britain and France declare war on Germain, it is likely. Jiang Bailey hesitated to speak. Uncle is too worried. From the moment Britain and France allowed the German army to develop, the outcome was already predetermined. Poland was just an attempt, and the Führer's appetite was far from that. If the Germans had no backing, how could they dare to stroke the tiger whiskers of England and France? As early as August 23, 1939, the Soviet Union and Germany signed a secret agreement in Moscow called the Soviet-German Non-Aggression Treaty. Facing Jiang Bailey's puzzled gaze, Cai Ye revealed a shocking secret that is currently unknown to Britain and France. What? Upon hearing this, Jiang Bailey widened his eyes. If that's the case, then all the actions of the German army can be fully explained. As long as the Soviet army takes the same action, the French army will not dare to act recklessly, and it is only a matter of time before the German army takes Poland. He. Cai Ye smiled again and said, Britain and France thought the world had not changed, but little did they know that since World War I, there have been earth-shattering changes. The Polish army relies on a large number of Polish cavalry to support it. Can those cavalry wielding swords and spears withstand German tanks? The Polish people's imagined battlefield duel would eventually turn into a massacre of vastly different powers, with a strategic gap of at least 80 years between them and the German army. In less than a month, Poland will be completely defeated, and the German army will take over the entire Polish region east of the Kherson Line. At that time, the Soviet army launched a large-scale invasion of the Polish region west of the Kherson Line, citing the Polish government's escape and the need to protect local immigrants. The two countries will completely divide Poland equally, thus establishing territorial negotiations and laying the foundation for the two strong countries in the European region. This was not just an attempt, but also determined that the victory of World War II would drift between the Germanic and polar bears. The biggest difference between World War I and World War II lies in the replacement of the main characters, with the German and Soviet armies being the true protagonists. If the two do not engage in a fight, cooperate with each other, and develop together, even if Britain, France, and the United States work together, they may not be able to resist their attack. However, how could two characters with the same great ambitions willingly cooperate? Beard and Stalin are both of the same kind to some extent. Or rather, Cai Ye is also growing towards their perspective and becoming a qualified ruler of a great country. Time and time again, the repeated messages shocked Jiang Bailey and he didn't know what to say. It took him a long time to come to his senses and he continued, Young Marshal. The European upheaval is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for us. The Burma War has ended, and according to statistics, 1672 British soldiers were captured, including one major general, and 2 brigadier generals. Such chips cannot yet earn us enough emotional war reparations, Britain is so rich. Speaking of this, Jiang Bailey's elegant face also showed a hopeful look, as he aimed to conquer the British Empire, a vision that many people could not hope for. Command. The 3rd Infantry Division and the 2nd Artillery Division are all under the command of Zhang Lingfu. The Air Force will immediately take off from Maguey Airport to cooperate with our military operations in the Shidong area. Tell Zhang Lingfu that besides taking down Kakul and Manipur, the 3rd Division of Jibu will keep a close eye on Zirji. With aggression in his eyes, Cai Ye said word by word. Hilger. Is the Marshal planning to plot against the Assam region? Jiang Bailey suddenly thought of the key point. Once Kakul, Manipur, and Surjar are connected, the Yanhuang army is like embedding a nail in the northeast region of South Asia, adjacent to Assam, overlooking the Bengal region in Chittagong. Chapter 9. The pattern is small, I want to focus on Britain. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Uncle, the situation is getting smaller. What is Assam? What I want is the entire northeast region of South Asia. Cai Ye walked straight from his seat to the large map hanging in the office and drew a vertical line with a red watercolor pen. The red vertical line, with the Brahmaputra River as the main body, leads north to Bhutan and south to the mouth of the Ganges River, like a natural dividing line that completely separates the northeastern region of South Asia and instead perfectly blends with Myanmar. Young Marshal. Isn't this step too big? Jiang Bailey looked at the red lines on the map, feeling somewhat surprised and inexplicable. The northeast region of South Asia covers an area of approximately 300,000 square kilometers, where over 30 million people live. It can be said that ruling this region is much more difficult than ruling Myanmar. Not big. Waving his hand, Cai Ye confidently said, the northeast region of South Asia is mainly integrated by multiple states. Among them, the former territory of Assam Kingdom occupies 2/3 of the area and population. Once our army occupies Silyar, it has already separated Assam's homeland from the south. The southern states of Assam, Tripura and Mizoram, are both unstable factors. The former covers an area of 11,000 square kilometers and has a population of about 1 million, practicing Hindu sexuality, while the latter is a British Indian Madhya Pradesh with an area of 21,000 square kilometers and a population of nearly 300,000. The population of other areas in Assam is about 15 million, all of whom are of the yellow race and share the same origin as the Dai ethnic group. They have always been conferred titles by the Central Plains dynasties of China. Yanhuang is definitely more able to win the support of the Assamese people than the British Army, and assimilating them is not a difficult task. With 15 million Assamese as the backing, it is only a matter of time before our army takes control of the entire northeastern region of South Asia. The most important thing now is time. Zhang Lingfu must completely eliminate the English army in Impel and occupy Silyar before the German army takes Poland. Only in this way can our army have absolute initiative to negotiate with the British Empire and force them to acknowledge established facts. Yes. Upon hearing these words, Jiang Bailey couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. At least, assimilating 15 million Assamese is easier than introducing 15 million Han Chinese from within the country. Same origin, same species, that's the best reason, there's no one. At the front line of Impel, the command center of the 3rd Division of the Mech Infantry Division. A young man in his 30s with slightly dark skin, dressed in a dark green military uniform and holding the rank of Major General, is gazing at the British Indian military formation not far away, with a strong sense of war in his eyes. At the end of 1937, Zhang Lingfu led his troops to engage in a bloody battle with the Japanese 18th Division for a day and night. He was seriously injured and returned to Xi'an to recuperate. He learned the truth from Cai Ye's mouth and was deeply hurt by the shameless government. In despair, the whole family moved to the Golden Triangle. It has been almost 2 years since then, and he has been highly valued here as one of the only 3 mechanized infantry division commanders. Since the start of the war in Burma, both the 1st and 2nd divisions of Jibu have achieved remarkable results, with only the 3rd division of Jibu wasting time here. How could Zhang Lingfu tolerate this? Master's seat. At this moment, Xing Jingheng, the chief of staff of the Jibu 3rd division, ran towards him with a telegram in hand and a cheerful expression on his face. Brother Jingheng, but there's good news. Zhang Lingfu turned around and couldn't help but ask. Brother Lingfu. General, you will be responsible for commanding the 2nd Artillery Division and the 3rd Infantry Division. Also, the Air Force has taken off from Maguey Airport and is expected to arrive at the front line in an hour. The General Staff ordered to completely annihilate the enemy of Impel at all costs and advance towards Silyar. I heard that the Golden Triangle has already dispatched all officials to Yangon. The matter of establishing the country is imminent, and our future lies in this battle. Staring at Zhang Lingfu, Yanhuang said with great anticipation. Okay. Immediately issue orders and prepare the entire division for battle. Suppressing the excitement in his heart, Zhang Lingfu gave the order. Yes. Yanhuang immediately conveyed the order to all the troops on the front line. At that moment, all 15,000 soldiers of the 3rd Infantry Division began to move, with 3 infantry regiments lined up in a straight line. The division's direct troops served as the main force for the assault, gathering 120 Renault R-35 light tanks, 150 cubic meters wheeled light armored vehicles, 200 SDKFC-251 semi-tracked medium armored vehicles, as well as a large number of motorcycles and trucks, forming a steel flood. The 36 German 150 mm howitzers and 108 105 mm howitzers equipped by the 2nd Artillery Division were also disguised and aimed at British positions. At this moment, the entire Impel region was shrouded in dark clouds, and an oppressive atmosphere of mountain rain and wind filled the buildings enveloped this small town with a population of only tens of thousands. The 8th, 13th, and 17th Divisions of the British and Indian Army, which were within reach, did not feel any danger approaching. British officers drank and played in clubs, while Indian soldiers laughed on the battlefield. They did not believe that the enemy had the courage to attack them, which laid the groundwork for the disastrous defeat of the British and Indian Army. At 4 p.m. on the same day, at the official residence of Chairman Yidu, a bald man in a long robe is practicing calligraphy in his study, which is one of his few activities. As the situation in North China continued to deteriorate, there were numerous voices of surrender, compromise, and peace within the nationalist government, and even he was unable to quell the conflict. Daring. A pleasant female voice came from outside, and Madame Song, dressed in a silk qipao, gently knocked on the door. At the same time, Chen Buliai, Deputy Secretary General of the National Government, Kang Zhe, Director of the Military Statistics Bureau, and Director of the 2nd Department of National Defense, appeared in front of the bald head. Please be seated. The 3 of them all respectfully greeted each other. Oh. How did you come? Seeing this, the bald man put down his brush and his gaze fell on the 3 of Chen Buliai. Please be seated. This is the Southwest telegram I just received, from Myanmar. Chen Buliai, Deputy Secretary General of the National Government, presented a top-secret telegram to his desk. Southwest. Myanmar. With a puzzled mood in his mind, he bareheaded and flipped through the telegram on the table. His eyebrows furrowed uncontrollably, and then he became furious and said, Mother Sheepy. What does Jiang Bailey want to do? He openly asks the nationalist government for rebellion, but he still sees me as the chairman and the nationalist government. The content of this telegram is only one, which is to ask Yang Hucheng and his family to go south to Myanmar. Looking across the country, no one knew that Zhang Xiaoluzi and Yang Hucheng were the eternal pains in his bald heart, which seemed to be filling the gap with him. Please be seated. Not only Yang Hucheng's family, but also Huang Xiansheng who is under surveillance. This is probably not something that Jiang Bailey can decide, but rather a decision made by the Southwest Marshal. Chen Buliai added with a solemn expression. Cai Ye. What did he do again? Upon hearing this, the young and energetic figure suddenly appeared in the bald head's mind. As the son of Cai Ye was received with a bald head when he first returned to China, revealing his outstanding qualities. He is the only student who graduated from the Berlin Military Academy 1 year ahead of schedule, which is the glory of the entire China. Cai Ye's appearance gave many people ideas, to the extent that he was later assassinated. If it weren't for Long Yun sending people to Kunming for treatment, he would probably have died a long time ago. Chapter 10. Bald Head. Are both humans and ghosts bullying me? You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the study room of the chairman's official residence, a bald sentence sounded and a moment of silence fell. Chen Buliai, Deputy Secretary General of the National Government, Dai Li, Director of the Military Statistics Bureau, and Kang Zhe, director of the Second Department of National Defense, exchanged a glance. Cai Ye was the first to come from the position of principal. According to the intelligence we have collected, Cai Ye recovered from his injury in September 1937 and did not stay in the southwest. Long Yun and Lu Xiang each dispatched an elite infantry regiment of about 5,000 people to escort Cai Ye to the Golden Triangle. Under the command of Cai Ye, the Golden Triangle region was fully controlled, with the establishment of an army, the development of industry, and the accumulation of strength. In early August, more than 100,000 troops marched out of the Golden Triangle and successively conquered Upper Myanmar, Lower Myanmar, Dana Shalin, Arakan and other areas, completely annihilated the British Burmese army, captured Yangon, and controlled 800,000 square kilometers and 20 million people of Myanmar. What? Upon hearing this, the bald man couldn't calm down and was somewhat stunned. The Golden Triangle. Principal. Director Cai Ye of the Military Statistics Bureau added, the Golden Triangle is located at the border of Myanmar, Thailand, and Laos, with an area of approximately 200,000 square kilometers. Located in the upper reaches of the Mekong River, with fertile land and warm climate, there has always been a history of cultivating poppies. However, after Cai Ye took control, he built factories and opened schools, changing his backward appearance. This place has become one of the wealthiest regions in Southeast Asia. A large number of goods produced in the Golden Triangle have entered China, including cigarettes, alcohol, candy, gauze, etc. Sulfonamide and quinine all come from the Golden Triangle. Due to local traffic congestion and towering mountains, it is difficult for the outside world to understand the situation, and we did not pay attention. In fact, the Golden Triangle region has been continuously introducing population from within and assimilating the local Shan ethnic group, reaching as much as 5 million at the beginning of the year. In addition to the 4 infantry divisions, 3 mechanized infantry divisions, and 2 artillery divisions revealed by Cai Ye, there are over 800,000 reserve troops, most of whom have received more than a year of military training and can be expanded into regular armies at any time. The words fell. The atmosphere in the study suddenly became particularly eerie. Baldy finally calmed down his inner emotions, stared at Cai Ye, and said in a deep voice, "Can I believe that Cai Ye, with 5,000 people, has established this foundation in less than 3 years? As long as he has enough weapons and equipment, he can expand his army to millions." "Yes, Principal." Director Cai Ye of the Military Statistics Bureau replied seriously. "Kick it off." Baldy took a few steps back and sat in a chair, speechless. How can one believe that a young man of 20 who has gone to a foreign land and started from scratch in such a short time, establishing almost a country? Chairman. The Japanese army is putting pressure on France, and the Governor-General of French Indochina has just notified us to impose restrictions on the transit of military supplies, specifically prohibiting the passage of weapons, equipment, cars, gasoline, and other military supplies. The Yunnan-Myanmar Highway is currently the main external transportation route for the government, with a monthly transportation volume exceeding 3,000 tons and continuing to rise. Deputy Secretary General of the National Government, Chen Buliai, then mentioned an important piece of news. Mother Sheepy. The little devils are planning to trap us and accelerate our invasion of China. The bald man sitting in the chair couldn't help but curse loudly. Since the September 18 incident in 1931, the nationalist government has received support from the international community and established multiple international aid channels to China, mainly the South China Channel, the Northwest Channel, the China-Vietnam Channel, and the Southwest Channel. Among them, the South China Passage, which landed at Xiangjiang Port and passed through the Guangzhou-Kowloon-Guangdong-Han Railway to Wuhan, has been completely cut off. The Northwest Passage mainly receives assistance from the Soviet Army, enters the country through Korgos, and arrives in Lanzhou from Dihua. Since November 1937, the Little Devils have carried out crazy aerial bombardment on Lanzhou for many times, never cutting off the traffic. But the Polar Bear's assistance to China is limited, far less than that of European and American powers, and can only be barely maintained. The China-Vietnam corridor, mainly consisting of the Yunnan-Vietnam Railway and the Guangxi-Vietnam Highway, has become the main lifeline of the nationalist government. From July 1937 to December 1938, over 100,000 tons of goods were transported in, with a monthly transportation volume of 10,000 tons. Once this route is cut off, supplies raised by European, American, and overseas Chinese must go through the Burma Road. Otherwise, without external support, the nationalist government would find it difficult to maintain the current situation. How could they persist in the war of resistance? Thinking of this, the anger in the bald head's heart was like a volcano that had accumulated for a long time. The little devils bullied him, and the European and American powers looked down on him. Now even the younger generation Cai Ye is riding on his head to defecate. It's unbelievable. Chairman General Kang Zhe, the director of the 2nd Department of National Defense, spoke cautiously. On the eve of the outbreak of the anti-Japanese war, the Yunnan Army was organized into 6 infantry brigades, 2 directly affiliated battalions, 6 directly affiliated regiments, 4 independent battalions, and 1 aviation department, with a total force of about 36,000 people. With the addition of 21 security camps organized by the county's standing teams, the total number is about 40,000 people. Long Yun allocated 50 million yuan to purchase a large amount of military equipment from countries such as France, Belgium, and the Czech Republic, which is sufficient to equip 40 infantry regiments. After the outbreak of the War of Resistance against Japan, 6 infantry brigades of the Yunnan Army were reorganized and became the 60th Army of the Army, with the commander Lu Han and 3 divisions under his command. They went out to resist the war in Yunnan. In December 1938, the 30th Army was expanded into the 1st Group Army, with Lu Han as the commander-in-chief. Lu Han stayed in Giang due to illness and appointed Gao Yinhuai as the commander-in-chief. Lu Han had already returned to Yunnan a few months ago, training and recruiting young soldiers under the banner of fighting for the country's resistance, and reorganized 10 infantry brigades and 20 regiments. Clack. A few people present trembled in their hearts. Who didn't know that the nationalist government had always wanted to take over the southwest for their own use, and Bald Head, under the pretext of suppressing the Red Bandits, unloaded Wang Jiaoye's military power and took over Guizhou province. But Yunnan and Sichuan are different from Guizhou. Wan Longyun of Yunnan has kept the management of Yunnan province impenetrable. Although Lu Xiang did not control the entire Sichuan province, he is the most prestigious among the Pao brothers, with a very high seniority. It should be noted that over 70% of adult men in Sichuan province have joined the Pao Brothers Association. The support of the Yunnan and Sichuan armies for the anti-Japanese war was deliberately consumed by the nationalist government, especially the poorly equipped Sichuan army, which died in large numbers on the front lines of the war. The nationalist government was not willing to issue weapons and equipment to them, largely in order to consume the strength of Long Yun and Lu Xiang. Gao Yinhuai, the acting commander-in-chief of the 1st Group Army of the nationalist government, reorganized from the Yunnan Army, had been flirting with the nationalist government more than a year ago. This army had already changed its surname, which was precisely what the Bald Head ordered. Nowadays, Long Yun secretly used Lu Han to reorganize 20 regiments, with over 80,000 people, apparently puncturing the window paper of the government. Arrange for Yang Hucheng and Huang Xianqing's family to go south. Rain Farmer, you can arrange it yourself. The bald and expressionless man, who had been silent for a long time, ordered. Yes, Principal. Dai Li, the director of the Military Statistics Bureau, responded. Other people also withdrew from the chairman's official residence one after another, and they didn't want to face the accumulated anger of the Bald Head.